Around the once peaceful town of Farmingdale, zombie-like creatures known as Zeds have begun to appear along the forest track. In the suburbs, having taken control of the village of East Iraq, on the highway, and also along the mountain track. For the people of Farmingdale, time is running out. Highway night assault, and we have to move one of our refugees. The ones at the university enter Boxville. Next, we check for infection. The level is at 4. The roll is a 7, no outbreak for now. We now lose 1 supply point. And there's movement of Zeds on the highway track, but first, the infection level is increased by each Zeds unit there by 1 to 5, and a new Zeds unit appears in the start space. We won't have any defensive terrain shifts in this turn. The Zeds attack Ingeborg. Rusty Staub will do the fighting. The Zeds have an advantage. The roll is a 9 and both sides suffer 2 hits and the Zeds retreat. Rusty Staub has an ability, Rugged, that may eliminate hits on 5s and 6s. No luck this time. Staub is eliminated. But he has an ability. For his saving die roll, he can roll 2 dice and pick the most favorable result. He picks the 6 and makes it unconscious to the hospital. He may be back soon. The infection level increases, however, to 7. Now, the new Zeds unit joins the one that just fought, and in the second move on the highway, this Zed mob falls upon Ingeborg with a huge advantage, times 3. The defending civilians are wiped out. The saving roll is no good, and they end up in the cemetery. The once defiant villagers are now refugees. The Zeds control Ingeborg, where chaos reigns, and the infection level is now 8. We have 1 event action, and it is used to move those fleeing refugees away into the nuclear plant. Our player action is used to heal Rusty Staub. The infection level is reduced to 7. And Sheriff Hunt's leadership ability is used to move the fire department auxiliaries to the nuclear plant. The situation along the highway track is now of some concern. Meanwhile, the Zeds still control one village in the suburbs. A hero arrives, and we must move 2 refugees this time. The ones at Boxville move towards the suspension bridge, and those at the nuclear plant continue moving in the direction of downtown. To the infection outbreak check, and this time there is an outbreak. We draw a fate card to see where it is, where the fewest Z units are. There are 2 on the highway, 1 in the forest track as well as in the mountain track, and 1 in the suburbs. And the new Zeds appear at East Irek, and now we have a Zeds mob there. The infection level is now reduced to 4. And we can hold this card for later to upgrade a civilian unit. It'll come in handy. Now to the eat phase. We roll 1 die. A 4, we lose. No supply points. And now there's Z movement in the forest, suburbs, and highway tracks. In the suburbs, the mob at East Irek falls upon the hapless civilians at the university. The Zeds have a 2-to-1 advantage, and the civilians are wiped out. Will they survive? They make it to the hospital in comatose condition. And chaos reigns at the university. The infection level is increased now to 6. There are still 7 chaos markers not in play. Meanwhile, on the highway track, the mob moves towards the nuclear plant, and the barricade at Ingeborg is no longer there. Before executing any actions, a new hero appears. Randomly, we choose among these 5. Who appears? It's Deputy Schmidt, and he has a special initiative marker that allows him to conduct actions for himself each turn. He begins the town center. We have 2 event actions. But before we play our Some Civilians Get Organized card, and now the civilians at St. Thomas have a leader, which means that they have a column shift to the right in gunfire and hand-to-hand combat. At the highway, we construct a barricade at the nuclear plant, and our supplies goes down to 4. Meanwhile, Deputy Schmidt moves along the highway track to join the auxiliaries at the nuclear plant. He has an initiative ability. He can use this marker to give himself an action each turn, and he uses it to conduct a gunfire attack on the Zeds mob. Unfortunately, he causes no hits, and our ammo level is reduced to 5. Sheriff Hunt uses his leadership ability for the civilians to gather some supplies. And the situation continues to deteriorate. Right beneath our feet. No refugees move for now. Will there be an outbreak? No. Whew. No supplies are lost this time. In the Zeds phase, we have to make a fated draw to see where these Zeds from underground attack. in the equal to column with normal, infection, and terrain shifts. And they attack on the mountain track. So they attack the village of Lefty's Pass, and they will attack our civilians there. Luckily for us, the Zeds suffer all the hits. Because these are underground Zeds, nothing else happens, but the infection level increases to 7. And we can hold this card for later. Time for the Zeds to move on the highway, suburbs, and mountain track. The Zeds mob falls upon the nuclear plant. The fire department auxiliaries defend. They have a fire axe trained ability, gives them a 1 column shift to the right. However, they suffer 3 losses. The Zeds none. They're almost wiped out. And they and Deputy Schmidt have to retreat. The Zeds take control of the nuclear plant, where chaos reigns and the infection level is increased by 1. A Zeds mob falls upon the village of Boxville. The civilians defend. The Zeds have the advantage. Both sides suffer equal number of hits, and the Zeds must retreat. The infection level goes up to 9. And on the mountain track, the already depleted Zeds attack Lefty's Pass, where El Toro Loco defends and inflicts 3 hits on the Zeds. He suffers 1. The almost dead Zeds retreat. The infection level is now a high 10. We get 2 event actions. The first one is used for the fire department 129 auxiliaries to exercise their fire hose ability to see if they can push one of the Zeds unit backs by rolling higher than their strength, and they do. So they split that Zeds mob. And now, time to play one of our cards in reserve. This time, we can bring a regular or a heroic civilian unit to the town center, and these are the ones we have to choose from. And we choose the Savior Corps, which has a field medical ability that can heal units without them having to go to the hospital. Because they enter the game now, we gain 2 supply points, and supply level is at 7. Sheriff Hunt now moves to the suspension bridge. He must stop there because of the ferry. And our player action is used to heal Rusty Staub, who now is at town center at full strength. The infection level is reduced to 9. Now, Sheriff Hunt uses his leadership ability to move the refugees onto the suspension bridge, and Deputy Schmidt uses his own ability to fire again at the Zeds at the nuclear plant, inflicting 2 hits, and our ammo goes down to 4. The battle rages on the highway track. Rusty Staub is back again, and Sheriff Hunt is on his way to help the folks at Boxville. Forest Night Assault. We move 2 of our refugees. The refugees at the suspension bridge make it to suburbia, while those running away from the Zeds at the nuclear plant are 1 space closer to downtown. We check for an infection outbreak, and there is one now. The outbreak will occur on the mountain track. It will occur at that track's sole village, Lefty's Pass. A 9 strength Zed unit attacks. The infection level is reduced now to 3. And at Lefty's Pass, El Toro Loco fights the Zeds. With the barricade, he has the advantage and inflicts 2 hits on the Zeds. He suffers 1. The strong Zeds now join the depleted ones who attacked before, and El Toro Loco is in a reduced state. The infection level is at 4. And now, St. Thomas Historical Graveyard bursts with undead, and 2 Zed units. A Zed mob appears there with a total strength of 10, and we have hand-to-hand combat. The odds are equal, and the Zeds suffer 2 hits. The civilians 1. The Zeds retreat and bump the Zeds unit 1 space back. But the infection level increases to 5. In the eat phase, we must roll. The roll is a 1, and that's equal to the number of units in the hospital. We lose a supply point. There's Zed movement in the forest track, but first, the infection level increases by 1 for each unit there. It increases now to a dangerous 8. And a new Zed unit appears in the forest track start space, and it is a strong one. And this time, our units will receive no terrain shifts. The Zeds mob and the forest track falls upon the civilians at St. Thomas, and the Zeds have a 2-to-1 advantage. They inflict 3 hits on the civilians, just enough to wipe them out for good, and they go to the cemetery. The villagers turn into refugees and flee to the farm. The infection level goes up to 9. The other Zeds on the forest track advance. We receive 2 event actions, and the first one is used to move the fleeing refugees on the forest track 1 space closer to town center. The other action is used to move the civilians in the mall district to join those refugees. Hunt's leadership action is used to move the refugees in suburbia into town center. And now they're interned in the refugee camp. From there, they can be converted into civilians that can fight the Zeds. But the infection level increases to 10. And now we equip those refugees. And they turn into a reduced civilian unit with a strength of 2 at town center. Next, Sheriff Hunt will use the player action to move 1 space closer to the Zeds at the university so he can engage in long-range fire. And Deputy Schmidt uses his initiative ability to fire once again against the Zeds and once again completely fail. Our ammo level continues to decrease now to 3. With Zeds approaching from the forest track, the mountain track, the highway track, and through the suburbs, the people of Farmingdale are living very tense days. What will happen next? Stay tuned to Dawn of the Zeds Apocalypse Level. Thanks for watching.